Hi, this is Mashnu, and here is position number 25 of the middle game training. This time it's a game that was played by Garry Kasparov, playing white here, and it's white to move in this position. So I would like to ask you to pause the video and see if you can find a way to improve white's position. How would you play here this position? I'm going to continue the explanation in a few seconds, so you can pause the video now and think for about 10 to 15 minutes perhaps. Alright, so let's continue now. What's going on here? Well, first of all, we see this pawn, this advanced pawn on d6. This pawn is being blocked by black with this bishop on d7, and it's quite difficult to get this bishop out of here. If the bishop moves, then the pawn on d6 will be attacked by the rook, and also black has the option of playing rook to a6 to attack this pawn. Black has a pawn majority also here on the queen side, and if we try to make a plan with white, we can use a question that this is something that you can really use in your own games. When you have a middle game position, ask yourself which piece is the less active, what is your worst piece, and how to improve that piece. And that's exactly the key to the solution in this position. The rook on h1 is doing absolutely nothing right now, and a very natural move, let's say at first sight, would be to play the rook to the open file, rook to c1. The problem with this move is that we cannot simply play a move like this without calculating, because here in fact after rook to a6 the pawn on d6 is attacked, so we are forced to return to d1, so that would be the loss of a tempo. So this general law or general rule of placing the rooks on the open files, it's not always something that we can follow blindly. What happened in this position is really very instructive. What white did is he opened a second file by playing the move f4. Just take a look at this move and imagine that the f file is opened and the rook goes to f1. From there it's attacking f7, and this bishop is also directed to f7. So this is the plan of white, to open a new file so the rook can stand on this new open file. Of course, it would have been possible to play rook to f1 right now, and in that case, well, there is a little difference. That is that if we play in this position rook to f1, black of course will try to prevent f4 by playing the move g5. So then we would have to prepare f4 by playing g3. So this whole thing is a bit slower, let's say. Now rook to a6 could be possible to attack this pawn on d6, and then we will have to try to play f4 anyway to see if we can get something. So this is a more, let's say, a slow way of executing this plan, and the most direct way is what Kasparov did by playing f4 immediately, so not giving black the chance to prevent this move, and then later the rook can go to f1. In the game here, e takes f4 was played, check, king takes f4, so the king is temporarily blocking the f-file, but soon the king will move away and the rook can go to f1. Rook to a6 was played now, and now with the move e5 we can defend this pawn on d6. Black played on the queen side with a4. The bishop went to d5. It's very important to keep this bishop on this diagonal towards f7, because that's the plan, to put more pressure on f7. Here a3 was played. The move a3, the idea is to bring the rook to a4 and see if black can activate his rook and try to find some counterplay there, but white simply places now his rook on f1 as planned. rook to a4 check, the king goes to e3, and now the pressure on f7 has increased so much that black has to do something against this, and it's not very easy to find a way. What black did now is he played the move bishop to e6, so bishop to e6, and white simply traded these bishops. Bishop takes e6, bishop takes e6, and now the rook from f1 goes to the 7th rank, and we have with white a wonderful position, both rooks working together perfectly, a passed pawn and a weakness on e6 as well as on h7. So this is actually already a won position, but we need to execute it. And black played here rook to h4, defending the pawn on h7 and attacking h2. Kasparov gave a check on g7, the king went to h8 to the corner, and now the rook from g7 went to e7. There is no way to prevent rook takes e6 and having these two connected passed pawns now. So here black is completely helpless. The two connected rooks on the 7th rank and the powerful d pawn, and soon the e pawn is going to fall. Let's say, for example, that black brings the king closer, king to g8, then rook takes e6. If black tries to advance here on the queen side, simply the rook goes back, and after rook takes h2, for example, then e6 is possible. e6 is possible because the pawn on d6 cannot be taken. If rook takes d6, then there is a checkmate on c8. So these two white rooks are really so powerful that there is not much to do here. If rook to h1, for example, then rook g7 check, the king goes to the corner, and then e7 is simply winning. It's impossible to stop these pawns. So alright, actually the most important moment I find is the idea in the starting position right here, the idea for white of opening a new file, opening the f file to use this rook. And I think many amateurs would play in this position something like rook to d1 or rook to c1, or perhaps something like bishop to d5. But these are all things that will still white is standing better after this. But the main thing is to think about what do we need in this position in order to improve it and to use the weaknesses of black, and that's actually an open f file. If we can have these thoughts of I need an open f file so I can place the rook on f1 and put pressure on f7, then the rest of the game is really a lot easier. We need to know what we are doing before we calculate. Alright, well, I hope you found this an interesting and instructive example of this game of Garry Kasparov that he played in 1980 in the Chess Olympiad. It was the team of the Soviet Union against Greece. But well, I leave it up to here, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Click on the thumbs up button if you liked the video, and I'll see you next time on YouTube. Alright, thanks, bye bye.